finding allies, and some of them we found very quickly, like the Tallberg Foundation here, very quickly became part of this work and in very big ways took it forward and advanced it. Most of the people that we found around the world did not think of themselves as environmentalists. They were people who were concerned with food and hunger in their communities, with public health, with women's issues, with war and peace and poverty and social justice of all kinds wherever they were, with all the things that are made impossible on a physically disintegrating planet. People who are concerned, say, with all the issues that nobody's able to pay attention to right now in Pakistan because they're so busy trying to figure out how to survive. Okay? And we tried to find people like that all over the world. We said as we began, and I'll maybe show these pictures to work in a minute. We said as we began, we need to take a day to sort of try and bring this number onto the world stage. And the day we picked kind of almost at random was October 24th of last year, so just over a year ago. And we asked people all over the world to do something on that day. We've done a lot of organizing. We've done mostly with younger people. We did these training camps in places all over the world, in Turkey, for Central Asia, in the Caribbean. We did one really memorable one in Johannesburg for Africa. We had one or two young people from every country almost in the continent, and they all came to Johannesburg. Most had never been on an airplane before, most had never left their country before, but they were good organizers, and they took in what we were saying, and then they fanned out back across Africa. Then we didn't hear much from them for the next 6 months, because the internet doesn't work all that well when you cross most of it. You can't just Skype people easily all the time across Africa. We knew they were working, and we really got the sense that they were working, that it was sort of all night going to work. 2 days in advance of this October 24th date, we got a telephone call from a wonderful young woman, an 18-year-old woman in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia, a woman named Lily. And she was on the phone and she was almost in tears. She was saying, the government has canceled our permit for our thing that we were going to do on Saturday. Ethiopia, not a very nice government, has canceled our permit. So we're going to do it today before they can tell us not to do it. We're so sorry. We know we're jumping the gun. We're supposed to wait till Saturday. We hope we're not spoiling it for everybody. And we have 10,000 people out in the street in Addis Ababa right now chanting 350. And we were like, Lily, don't worry, it's okay about the date. It's not a problem. And it really was amazing, because after that, for the next 48 hours, we told everybody we're very web-based. Because we have no money, maybe in part, we use the web for everything we do, but we don't believe in sending people email petitions or things like that. We use the web to organize things, to make them happen on the ground, to help coordinate. And then mostly we use the web to take images of what happens and bring them together to make it more than the sum of their parts. So for the next 48 hours, pictures just flowed in from all over the world. Before it was done last October, there had been 5,200 demonstrations in 181 countries. CNN said it was the most widespread day of political action on any issue in the planet's history. And it was especially, the pictures came from, the next picture that arrived, in fact, was just as odd and unexpected. It was from U.S. troops in Afghanistan. They'd made a 350 with sandbags, and they sent a note saying, we're parking our Humvee for the weekend and walking where we need to go, things like that. And part of us, we looked at it and said, we're not that keen on the war in Afghanistan, and do we want... But then we thought, no, this is, actually the first truly global problem we've ever faced, and it's a very good sign that people of any kind are involving themselves. The pictures were amazing, and they came from all over, and the thing that's most powerful about them to me is that they put, to my mind, once and for all, the lie to the notion that environmentalism is a concept embraced by rich white people who have taken care of their other problems. Most of the people in these pictures, and I'm going to fire through a bunch of them, most of the people in these pictures are poor, black, brown, Asian, young, because that's what most of the world is made up of. And what do you know? They're just as concerned about the future as anybody else. They were coming, as I say, from all over the place. 300 big demonstrations across India. We had very good youth organizers. Some of them we didn't even know where they were. They just, pictures would arrive, someplace in Buddhist Asia, but I just liked the picture. Many of them from incredibly poor places. This is someplace on the Congo River near Kinshasa. They didn't have a digital camera. They developed a picture in a home darkroom. It didn't come out very well, so they had to write in what their banner had said, But that somehow they not only gotten the message, but somehow gotten a T-shirt, into the middle of the Congo struck us as a good sign. There were lots of, you can't read that banner either, but it's the same sort of thing. Incredibly creative. There were about 200 or 300 underwater demonstrations. In fact, there were 350 people underwater at the Great Barrier Reef that day. Istanbul had just had terrible flooding, so there were 6 or 7 big demonstrations there. Lots of public art of all kinds. That's from the Space Needle in Seattle. Those are the colors of the Venezuelan flag. I just like that picture of Tahiti. That's an operating room in Puerto Rico. Hopefully they didn't stop for too long. Amazing images. Those are lantern dancers in Australia. One of the things that made us happiest was that, and we'll talk, I think, more about it, and I assume Sigurd and others will talk more about it as the week goes on, but one of the things we were very happy about was the first time very large-scale involvement of faith communities around the world. One of the reasons we were able to organize so effectively was that 2 weeks before the Bartholomew, the patriarch of the Eastern Orthodox Church, leader of 400 million Christians, had given a sermon. He's a very plain-spoken man, where he said, global warming is a sin, and 350 is an act of redemption. That was useful. And organizing across a vast swath of Eastern Europe. Here's Cape Town. That's the head of Muslim South Africa, in the middle, the kind of leader of native and animist traditions. And behind him in scarlet, Desmond Tutu's successor as Anglican Archbishop, at the head of a big multi-faith march across Cape Town. It's a Pentecostal school in Ghana. I just liked all the kids. That's not even that interesting a picture unless you know that Wheaton College is the most important evangelical liberal arts college in the world. It's where Billy Graham went to school. And even 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been seen as dangerously pagan to have a environmental event of any kind there. It's a good sign that that's beginning to change. I'd been to Bethlehem to organize a few weeks before this. Obviously a very hard place even to get to. People wanted to work together, but the military barriers and things are too much. So since the Dead Sea is shrinking very quickly, the Jordanians said, we'll make a big 3 on our beach. The Palestinians said, we'll take care of the 5, and the Israelis made the 0 along their shore. And obviously that got a lot of coverage. You can see the plane, the shadow of the plane up there taking the aerial images. A lot of that kind of big numbers thing, the BBC put that together for us. That's Sydney and London under the Ferris wheel and Copenhagen. Iconic places all over the world. So in India, big palaces. In the United States, it was a Saturday in the fall, so football games were key. There's 100,000 people watching the Syracuse University cheerleaders, make me remember. But just place after place after place after place, including places that really, some of you are old enough to remember that Bhopal was the scene of probably the greatest environmental crime of the last century. 3,000 people died when a U.S. company, Union Carbide, let its factory deteriorate to the point that it leaked poison into the atmosphere and killed people in their beds. It moved me that people in places like that were even willing to engage with the rest of the world. Lots of good climbers. I showed you lots of people just figuring out. People turn out to be unbelievably creative is one of the things that I left to their own. Because we weren't, it should be said, we weren't organizing this. was like what we call in the U.S. a potluck supper. Okay, we had set the date and the theme and found sort of people, but we didn't tell anybody you should paint a huge banner and then go hang it off the side of your canyon, you know, in Chiapas. They figured out what to do on their own, and not surprisingly got lots of great coverage and things. In Soweto, heartland of resistance to apartheid, they did 350 bungee jumps, but the important thing was that they strung the bungee line between the cooling towers of a defunct coal-fired power plant. And they sent us a note saying, this is the best use for coal-fired power plants, you know, from now on, going forward. That's my daughter in there someplace. Those are maple syrup sack buckets in Vermont, because we are losing our maple trees quickly as the climate changes. 300 big rallies across China. Not easy to do this sort of thing in China. One of them did get busted up by the police, but the others, they walked up to the line and didn't go across it. That's kids from the China Youth Climate Network making a human wind turbine, and behind them you can see the edge of the world's largest wind farm there in Inner Mongolia. Terrific activists and workers. We set this up to be a campaign, not an organization, because we thought there were more than enough environmental organizations already. And one of the best things about it has been that all kinds of other established organizations have been able to join in and feel not threatened by it and take part. So people like Greenpeace have been a big help. Mostly just people in the poorest areas and most difficult places in the world. That was the smallest demonstration. That woman started out with a large bunch of her friends, but they had to go through 6 American military checkpoints to get to the old Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 8 wonders of the ancient world. Everybody else got scared away eventually, but Ola kept going, and she's a remarkable organizer and now a good friend. It's a military coup in Honduras, but people managed a big demonstration anyway. The Maldives was probably the country of all that embraced this work the most completely. The Maldives is an amazing place, a wonderful country, incredibly beautiful, entirely Muslim, one of the most progressive and amazing presidents in the world. The president, this is a good picture of the Student Council of the Maldives holding their meeting in the lagoon to demonstrate sea level rise. The president went them one better. He trained his entire cabinet how to scuba dive so they could hold an underwater cabinet meeting against their dying coral reef and send this 350 resolution off to the UN, which, needless to say, got a lot of press as well. Just place after place after place, people with enormous creativity. We took over Times Square that day, one end of it, and